Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our X-Nav Virtual Customer Conference. I'm Michelle Jackson, our head of marketing, and I'm really excited to welcome everybody here this evening as we talk all things clinical about X-Guide Dynamic 3D Navigation. I'm happy to see a wide variety of customers that we have attending with us tonight. Everyone from brand new customers to some of our very beginning first customers that we had using the X-Guide. So I think this is going to be a really valuable program for everybody. We're going to cover so many different topics with Dr. Emery that everybody should get something wonderful out of this. Before we get started, a couple quick administrative things. We will have everybody muted during the presentation, just so that we can focus without interruption on the presentation. But at the end, we will open it up for questions and answers. Throughout the presentation, though, if you do have a question, please feel free to go to the bottom of your screen and you'll see a Q&A panel. And if you click that button, you'll be able to enter your questions and we'll be sure to get them answered at the end of the program. Additionally, in order for you to see the presentation and Dr. Emery, on the top right of your screen, if you click the view button, you'll see something that says side-by-side speaker. And that will allow you to see Dr. Emery speaking as well as his presentation slides throughout the event here. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Robert Emery, who is our co-founder and chief medical officer at X-Nav Technologies. He's also a board certified oral and maxillofacial surgeon in Washington, D.C. And he has very many wonderful things to share with us this evening. Welcome, Dr. Emery.
Well, thank you, Michelle. It's always fun to get together with people in the X-Nav family. The interesting thing tonight is that everybody got the opportunity to send in questions ahead of time. So what I did was I looked at the questions and they're incorporated, the answers to the questions are incorporated into the program tonight. And I'll try to point out when there was a question and what the answer is. The other thing is a few things. I am going to be talking about off-label and non-FDA approved procedures that you can do with the X-Guide. I'm doing that because there's so many questions about it. And so when I do that, I will always point out that this is not approved by the FDA. This is things that either other doctors have done or I've done. So what are we going to talk about? And again, this has to do with what we're talking about these things because people asked about it. They want to know how they can be more efficient because most of the people here on tonight are users. And there's some really advanced users that, I mean, I don't need to tell them what to do. And then I'm going to talk about maximizing your staff involvement because that's the answer to efficiencies. And, you know, there were a lot of questions about how do I make money with this? And normally we don't talk about that kind of stuff, but because there were so many questions beforehand, I'm going to mention it. And really most of the answer to that is staff. And then how to maximize the use of your equipment. There were so many questions about off-label uses. We're going to talk about some of those things. Some of them are related to implants and some of them aren't. And then we're going to go through from full arch, from single to full arch. I'm going to talk about high-end use in the single, and then full arch, I'm going to talk to you about some of the new stuff that's going on. Really, let's talk, I mean, what's the big deal about digital dentistry and really the navigation? It's ideal for collaboration. And you think, well, really, what's big deal about collaboration? Well, if you're a specialist, it's a no-brainer. You want to collaborate with your referring doctors and the labs, et cetera. But if you're doing it all in your office, you want to be able to talk to your staff, your lab, and the other doctors in your office. And all this is related to software and hardware and how flexible and efficient the system is. Now, everybody that's heard me speak before, and you know, I've had the honor to speak to a lot of you. You talk about dynamic navigation as guided freehand surgery. Look, 80% of us are doing still guided free, or just doing freehand surgery because it allows you to be so efficient. Well, dynamic navigation is guided freehand surgery. You can do anything you're thinking of. But really, what is it? It's a vision system. It allows you to plan the cases, and it allows you to just your cases in with micron accuracy, not just in your planning, but when you're actually doing your surgery. This is the most important thing, and this is about the future. X-Guide is not a single procedure instrument. It is an instrument you can use for so many things. All these things have been described, and somebody's done them, and somebody's talked about them in the literature. I've done most of these procedures myself with the X-Guide. In orthognathic surgery, who would think we could guide orthognathic surgery? But there are people that are doing it now and talking about it. Zygomas and pterygoids, those are off-label procedures. And third molars, you can make it safer. Again, it's off-label, but people are doing it, and I'm going to talk to you about it. So what's the workflow? The exam, you got all these different options, all the high-tech digital stuff that we're doing. You're planning, you want to be able to use any system. There are a lot of people that like, Blue Sky, their X-Nav software, exocad, co-diagnostics, 3Shape. Everybody likes different software. You master software, you don't want to think about learning another software system. You can use them all with dynamic navigation in the X-Guide. And then this is the big deal. Especially if you're talking about doing full arch stuff, how are you going to attach a tracking system to the patient? And there's a lot of options. And then finally, this is new, photogrammetry. How are you going to take a full arch impression? And guess what? The X-Guide allows you to take an impression. It's not yet available, but it's really close, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. So you can do any imaging modality, doesn't matter what you use, any lab, any implant system, and you're going to be able to use fewer instruments. You're not going to be able to have to buy a $35,000 3D camera. So this is the big deal. Let's talk about it. We all know we should be guiding everything, and I'm going to keep talking about that tonight because it really is true. And the more we look at the literature, the more we see that. You need to think about efficiency. And if you want to make more money, and I hate to talk about the money, but that's what drives everything, especially if you want to be good at what you're doing, you need to be more efficient. And the staff is the key. The staff should be doing almost everything. So they're going to take the CT, they're going to do the initial plan, which means they're going to bring in all the images and superimpose them. They're going to calibrate the instruments, and they're going to even register initially. What are you going to do? You're going to verify the plan. You're going to do a system check to make it right, and then you're going to guide. Flow for an X-Clip. An X-Clip automates the registration process. Hopefully you all understand what that means. We're going to be going through things tonight in really, really quickly. In the future, we're going to go through stuff in detail in other meetings. In other words, if you want to learn more about just an EDX screw, there are going to be other events where we talk about just EDX screws. But what does your staff do with the X-Clip workflow? The staff does it all in less than 30 minutes, and you haven't even interacted with your patient. You might be seeing another patient. They might be thinking they're waiting. If you weren't seeing them, they'd think they're waiting, and your staff is working with them, and things are getting done. What are you doing? You're going to just guide these, and it's faster. That's the thing. There's a number of high-end users on this meeting, and they're going to tell you that they do things way faster because they've maximized their staff. And once you start guiding with this, like I do a single tooth, high aesthetic case with a subepithelial connective tissue graft in less than an hour. I mean, and I'm not stressed. So X-Mark, which is anatomic registration, which again, we're going to go through in more detail. Your staff can do it unless, of course, you're doing an edentulous case or your patient's asleep. But most of the time, my staff does this for me. What am I doing? I'm just guiding. So it's like freehand surgery, except I'm not looking in the mouth. I'm just picking up the instrument, measuring the distance, the length of the instrument, and guiding. And I'm not really thinking about it. And it's so fast. So what's new? What's new is X-Mark, or anatomic registration, with using the intraoral scan. And that's a big deal, because this allows you to, before surgery, to do your superimposition. And as we move forward, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more of this tonight, we're going to use AI, artificial intelligence, to do some of this stuff as far as superimposition. And if you're using Noble DTX, it's already done for you. You do the superimposition ahead of time, and then you use that for the registration. And so you're not dealing with artifact. Those of you who are using the previous versions and have struggled with anatomic registration, this is the answer. It's going to be easy to do your registrations. I can tell you what I do with patients that are older. I will always, if I can, put on an X-clip ahead of time and take a CT. I'll even take it for free, because the CT with a X-clip automates this process. But if somebody comes in with the CT and you don't want to take another one, this is going to make it easier. So planning, Dr. Block, we've all talked about the problem really with most of this stuff is that we're not very good at treatment planning, especially when you first start treatment planning with 3D images. You think you're good, and you're really not as good as you think you are. And then you look at your plan, and you know, if you're doing static eyes, you look at your result and you go, what the hell happened? You can't see what happened. Well, you're going to be able to see what happened with navigation. Navigation makes you better at planning. You can see what you're doing. You recognize your errors when you're treatment planning, and then you can change them. The other thing is you can feel the bone when you're drilling. You can see what happens. You see the way the bone bounces off. Dr. Moy talks about it all the time. He says, I'm off-roading when he's using navigation. It's like you can see what's happening, and so you're going to change the way you plan based on what you know is going to happen, and you get better and better. And we're also using AI now, and that's going to get better and help you. So what are the improvements we've had? There were a lot of questions about ISO surfaces and not being able to see what you want when you get into these really complex cases. This is what's coming. Stackable STL files. Stackable STL files are really important when you're using different software to plan dentures and things like that, like Avenant. Or if you're doing Blue Sky and you want to stack an STL file, you can now stack multiple STL files inside the X-Nav software. That's powerful. If you don't have it, call tech support and you're going to get it. The ability to plan EDX screw positions. If you look in this image up in the top right, you'll see that blue object. That's an EDX screw out for an extraoral approach. The use of ability of STL files for X-Mark. Again, we've mentioned that. That's huge. It makes anatomic registration or X-Mark way easier. So what's coming? Automated planning with AI. In other words, they'll map the arch, they'll find the nerve, and they'll superimpose the STL files. When you bring in STL files in the future, they'll automatically be meshed into the coordinate system that's in the STL files. There's a lot coming up into the future. And then automated segmentation software with AI. All this stuff is just on the edge. It's coming soon. So this is something, there's a very famous star in this. There he is, Mr. Scharf. He's going to demonstrate AR, or augmented reality. This is around the corner, probably this year, or 2000 next year. I think
Start recording.
what Chris just did and what he's doing is the powerful part about it. Voice controls.
Previous target.
Voice controls allows you to have fewer assistants in the OR with you. You don't need somebody to run a mouse, and you don't need to keep changing your gloves.
Teeth.
So this is very soon to be there. So this is the key. I mean, this is really what makes the X-Guide and navigation powerful. Your staff. How do you incentivize your staff? I'll tell you what I've done. I mean, everything is empowerment and prestige. I mean, that's really what it's all about in the office. That's how you keep people for 20 or 30 years. But how do you move the system into the office? What I've done is given patients levels, and I've given them a little bit of compensation. You could just do a bonus. That's up to you how you do this. But what I've done in the office is break things down into modules. The first module is putting in X clips and getting the image acquisition. In other words, they put in the X clips, they take the image and they do an intraoral scan, and then they bring it into the software. That's module number 1. Module number 2 is at surgical time. They're calibrating. Module number 3, and I'm teaching them the whole time, is planning. So they learn how to do everything from taking the X clip, image acquisition, then calibrating, and that includes registration, the X mark, and then planning. So once they get that all mastered, then they become a certified X-Guide assistant when they can teach all 3 of those things to their other colleagues, and then they get a bonus. So at each step, first module, clip and image acquisition, they get a little tiny bonus. Second, calibration, they get a bonus. Planning, they get a bonus. That's a bigger bonus. And then finally, when they become a X-Guide assistant, they get another bonus. And when they're an X-Guide assistant, they are teaching the other people in the office. I cannot tell you how excited they are to be an X-Guide assistant. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but it's a big deal, and they're really proud of what they do. And I'm always telling them, look, you guys can plan better than most dentists. That may or may not be true, but they're proud of what they're doing. So where are we? You know, we have CTs that improves our vision. We have intraoral scans that improves our vision and our planning, both of these things. Planning software, all these things are digital. You don't need to make anything. So static guides, look, I'm not going to bash static guides. They're just as accurate and precise. But what's the problem? You got to make something so they're less efficient. You can't see what you're doing is operating, and you can't change it. That's my opinion. If you like them, keep doing them. Dynamic navigation, look, it solves all your problems. It improves your vision, your accuracy, your efficiency, and you get all the efficiencies and the flexibility of freehand. It's purely digital. So this is an image of what's going on. All those dotted lines are electrons. You're not making anything. So what are we coming around to? The ability to take an impression with the same device. That's improving efficiencies, and it should be more accurate. This is what's coming along. So that's FastMap, which is navigated photogrammetry. This is different than some of the systems on the market because everything's related to the coordinate system. So this is some of you saw this at some of the meetings. We're taking an impression now in that video. When you see the green, the machine's seeing those those scan bodies. They're little scan bodies, look like snowmen, and the progress of this X. So that's how long it took to take an all-on-4 impression. So what do you get out of it? To the right, intentionally, we've used Mesh Mixer to show you its generic file. What are we doing? These are the STL files that pop up all in the same coordinate system after you've taken the impression. So this is not beforehand. So all the things you want to see are there. The pre-op CT, the plan, the position of the impression post, and the position in the implant. So everything's there. So you should be able to print something after the fact. So you're all good surgeons, you know evidence. There's no doubt that any form of CAS, computer assisted surgery, is better. It's more accurate than freehand. We know that. There's 10 metadata analysis on it. So how about bridge, bone reduction? This is what's coming up. Guided bone reduction. On your left, you're going to see a new way of creating three-dimensional objects with the X guide. Any piezo tip you want around the corner, you're going to be able to use. We've just captured the geometry. And then on the right, this is new software to do straight cuts. So you should be able to do bone reduction, ridge splitting, osteotomies, and complex extractions. Again, this is around the corner. We're just showing you what's coming around. So how does this work? This is a little study that we did with some residents at the hospital center. There were 2 experienced surgeons, myself and my partner, and 2 software naive residents. And we did, each did maxilla and mandible. And here's the difference between freehand and guided osteotomies. No big surprises. You're better when you guide. So my outcomes, your outcomes seem so good. Does it really matter? Is it clinically relevant? Are there easy cases? This is what I hear all the time. People say, I pick my cases. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense because it's really about statistics. So let's look at this. Dr. Hartman shared this with me. This is a little graphic he said. He put me together based on the outcomes of our studies with navigation. The left is our plan, the middle is navigated, the right is freehand. So it's easy for you to put them in. It's easier for me to put them in. But is it easy to restore the case on the right? Yeah, it is. But what happens to the patient? Is he more likely to fracture the porcelain? Yeah, it's more likely to fracture the porcelain on the right. This is something that came out recently. It was about CAS, computer assisted surgery, 3 times more likely to have a failure, and guided is better than freehand. Well, you can argue about metadata and you can talk about percentages, whatever, but this is real data. All the data says the same thing. You can use this honestly and feel good about saying you're a better surgeon when you guide. And it's worth it to guide. You can use it in marketing, closing cases with patients, but it's easy to do this because it's true. Now, this I think is really powerful. Everybody says, oh, it's an easy first molar, giant space, I can't make a mistake. This came out of Columbia University, last year. And they talked about cavities, right? Cavities. So incidence of caries goes up almost 70% as you put the implant more distal. I can tell you, I have so many cases I put too distal, and a couple of millimeters matters. So is this an easy case? It's not an easy case. And so many of us say, I'm only going to guide the tough cases. Well, they're all tough statistically. That's the fallacy of our thinking. There is no easy case. Periimplantitis. this is a disease now. It's an epidemic. And every single paradigm that's related to peri-implantitis starts with implant position. And a millimeter is a mile. So you don't think that position matters? It does. 40% in this, I mean, I could go on case after study after study. So how about yourself? This is I cover the residents for at the hospital center for third molars. This is them taking out wisdom teeth. This is me. You've seen this, so many of you, taking out a lingually impacted bicuspid using navigation and a 3D microscope. You know, look, this is the way you want to operate as you move forward in your career. So the literature is clear. Any form of CAS is superior than freehand. You will be a better surgeon. You'll have better outcomes. Why aren't we guiding every case? This is the answer. Because we think we're better than we are, and we don't pay attention to the literature. We say we're evidence-based surgeons, but we don't believe it. We act differently. We have confirmational bias because we think our outcomes are good. So when should you guide? Damn it, you should guide every case. It's about the statistics. It's not about what you think. There are no easy cases. That outcome study at Columbia, there's going to be more and more of them. So why aren't there any differences between static, dynamic, and robotic surgery? And I tell you this because it doesn't really matter what you're doing, but there's a lot of talk about robotics. They say it's better. Well, it's not. This is the only study that's published with robotics. It's edentulous. There's no difference statistically in these systems. And why is that? Where is the error? It's in the CBCT and the drills. There's 300 to 400 microns of error in the CBCT, and there's 400 microns in the drill itself. And every articulation in every robot is an error. So the image on your right is an autonomous robot. It doesn't even have a doctor attached to it. He's not controlling it. This is in China. You can't do this in the United States. What do you see? What is dynamic navigation? It's robotic vision. And a lot of industrial robots are driven by dynamic navigation. So why aren't we doing CAS? This is the honest answer. And we always avoid these things when we talk to people. Can't talk about this at major meetings because you're not supposed to talk about money, but this is the answer. People talk about money. It's I'm faster and I make more money. And that's the truth. So dynamic navigation, doesn't matter which system you use. You can do this in less than 30 minutes. But I say you, it's not you, it's your staff. Your staff can do everything and you're ready to go, and then you're going to be faster. And you can change your plan if you don't like what's done, and you can see the entire surgical field, and you can feel what you're doing with navigation. Cost considerations. Oh, you say, well, I'm going to spend $100. It's not $100. It's a profit center. CBCTs, I mean, you think about 20 years ago, people said, I am not going to spend $100,000 on a CBCT because I am just fine with a Panorex. Well, now everybody has CBCTs and they realize they make money with them, even if you have managed care. It's the same thing with dynamic navigation. There are codes for all this stuff. And it's the same thing for IOSs, intraoral scans. I just bought a second intraoral scanner because it's faster. And I know I'm going to make more money with it because it's faster. And I make, not a lot of money, but it's better for my patients and it's better for the outcomes. So why wouldn't I use it? So planning. This is the problem really with everything. I mean, Dr. Moyes and Dr. Block have stood up in all the oral surgery meetings and said, we're not very good at planning. Well, navigation makes you better at planning. You can see your plan executed live. You recognize your errors, and so you see what you did wrong with your plan. You can correct your errors live, and you can interact with your errors when you're looking at the patient. And then you can feel the errors and feel what's happening with the bone. It's a big deal. You're going to get better. I'm not going to show this again. Chris, this is Chris planning. We have planning software that's augmented reality. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but planning is a big deal. But your image acquisition is really important in your planning. What you see is what you get. We all know what kind of images we can use. You can use the CBCT alone. You can use an imaging guide. Very few people use that. You can use STL file superimposition. That's gigantic. And dual scans is gigantic. You can do dual scans with X-Guide and dynamic navigation. We all know how to do that. But here's the deal. How many of you do these full arch crown and bridge cases? I do a lot of them. And so what I do is take the provisionals out of the patient's mouth, put fiducials on them, and take a CT of those provisionals and put them back in. And then I take a CT, and then I take an intraoral scan with the fiducials on it. And that way I can put the opposite arch in at the same time. It's a big deal. You can see everything. And a lot of people forget about this. You can do this with a 3-unit bridge. Dr. Hartman shared this with me, and now I use a lot of these. He calls it the X block. If Dr. Block is listening, the X block I think is sort of funny. This is really powerful. You don't need the fiducials on it to do it. All you need to do is put the block in the mouth that holds the tracker. You put some blue mousse or whatever bite registration material you want, put it in, and then you do X mark, anatomic registration. This is fantastic. Last time I used it, I remember saying to my patient when I was trying to put drill in the back of the mouth, open your mouth, you can't do that. So this is really a real great addition to the dynamic navigation. And I thank Dr. Hartman for that. These are the different things you use for sedation and general anesthesia. I do a lot of sedations and general anesthesia. All these solutions are useful. So extended indications, there's lots of different extended indications. Removing implants. This is an implant. The real problem is the floor of the mouth. You can see we got it out. This is shared with me from Dr. Bath. This is a ridge split. When we get the piezo, this will be a lot more doable. These are off-label indications, biopsies, third molars. I'll show you some examples of this. This is like a 10-year-old case. This is someone I'm going to do a deep bone biopsy. At the same time, I was going to take an implant out. You can see I'm using the implant drills to do this bone biopsy. There's a little fibroosseous lesion. Third molars. This is an old study. This was a proof of concept thing that we did published in 2017, started in 2015. This is a case I did on Monday. This is a friend who's a plastic surgeon. This is his mother. This is a third molar deep with the link, ankylosis. We use AI to look at the perforation into the floor of the mouth and see that it was a true ankylosis case. She had pus and needed and a dentigerous cyst. We used this 45-degree hand paste to get around the distal lingual area. And this is the post-op coronectomy. And you can see, I wouldn't have wanted to go after this case. It's fused on the lingual and the nerve is wrapped around it on the lingual displays through, you can see that groove on the first view on the left. So this is AI enhanced segmentation of teeth. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to be able to get very soon. Some of the questions were dealing with ISO surfaces. That's a super complex discussion that we will deal with in some future meetings online. This is the answer to that question. The AI will get fat, smarter and smarter, and the ISO surfaces will get more and more accurate. So how good are we at third molars? We're probably not as good as we think. This is a case that I did with my partner, Dr. Ratana, taking out these impacted teeth. Instead of going from the palate, we went from the buccal and deliver them from the buccal. These are delivering them from the buccal. You know, we only drilled in 3 millimeters, and there was a small flap for both of these teeth. The morbidity is significantly decreased. This is a case shared by Dr. Hartman, and you can see he's printed the mandible, pre-bent the plate, and he's doing this in his office, and his outcomes are really nice. Taking out tori. You can see it looks like we drilled short, but actually that's the floor of the mouth, split the mouth. This is another case shared with Dr. Raj Bath, this distraction case. I don't do any of these anymore, but he's addressing the problems with distraction into the floor of the mouth. He had a nice outcome. This is endo. I don't do endo, but this is Charles Malpin. This is approved by the FDA for canals, calcified canals. And this is him drilling into a calcified canal. And you can see this would take hours, like an hour or two before. And you can see how rapidly he's drilling down the center of the canal. This was done, this is one of his microendoaxis, and it's approved for, the X-Guide is approved for apicos. This is a study done by Dr. Potzi and some of his colleagues, Dr. Khan and et al. And you can see he's doing a pure digital workflow with navigation. In other words, there is nothing fabricated except for the prostheses that are interacting with the patient. Everything is digital. This is what we're striving for. This is a case I did years ago at the beginning, and you can see the what happened was the patient had a CT taken, then got the Edwise appliance taken off, and then she left back to school, and then she relapsed, and we took the intraoral scan. It didn't match up. So what we did was we did a digital treatment plan, and you can see I would never have placed an implant like that. This is based on what we predicted the ortho would be the outcome, because we knew where we had been, and this is the outcome we had. This is a partially dentate case, completely digital workflow. This is probably from 7 years ago. This is what I'm striving for with Full Arch now, taking the teeth out, putting the implants in, taking impressions, and then delivering the case the next day or the day after that when the patient gets Exparel. This was done with 3Shape a few years ago, and this is the digital outcome. There's a completely digital case back about 7 years ago. Partial root extractions. There's a lot of data on this now. Gluckman's been working this with a group for almost 10 years, maybe a little more. There are outcomes that long. This definitely works. You find the apex of the tooth, you split it, and then you leave 1.5 millimeters of shield, and you bevel it back. And this is the kit he sells. If you want to do this, you should take his course. They're offered at lots of different meetings. These are you can guide all this with these different instruments. These are some cases I did over the last couple of years. You can see the obliteration of the apex, ideal plan. We're now splitting the tooth, and we're using the 2D windows to do this. And again, we're splitting the palate. We're using the 2D windows to do this. This is post-op. The 3D image was taken with a small field CT because they're following the other tooth. And this is a 2-year follow-up. This is another case. Again, the same case. This is 2-year follow-up. This is, I think, the power of this. These are kind of cases you can't argue about. This is a canine with ankylosis and internal resorption from an extrusion. These cases are a nightmare when you take these teeth out. Instead of going from 6 months or to a year of reconstruction, this is an immediate case. And this is the kind of outcomes you get. And this is a 2-year follow-up. So how about the posterior maxilla? We all know about osseodensification. Definitely works. X-Guide makes it easy. Left case is sinus elevation, right is osseodensification. This is another case with 2 millimeters of bone, and we elevated it. This is a case that Dr. Raj Bath did, an immediate sinus elevation using osseodensification, and a 2-year follow-up. So there's no doubt it works. Is it as accurate? This is from the study with Dr. Block. We pulled out with the residents 34 cases I did with osseodensification. There's no difference in accuracy in the worst bone in the maxilla. And we got about 3 to 4 millimeters of augmentation. So how about full arch? Everybody wants to talk about full arch. The workflow is pretty much the same. You calibrate the handpiece. This is different. Got to attach something to the patient. Then you do anatomic registration. We call that X mark. Then we refine if we need to, and then we navigate. You don't need any special X-ray. You don't need fiducials, and you can work with any lab and any implant system. These are the attachment options that are available today. We've been listening to our fellow surgeons and X-Guiders, and these are some new prototypes that are coming along, a vertical and a lateral. A lot of distance options. It's just, you just slide it in these slots. And if you'll notice, there's no more nut. It's this round nut, which uses the same screwdriver as you use to attach your arms. And that allows us to get the parts closer to each other. Where we put them, there was a lot of questions about this. We recommend the symphysis and the nasal spine and the piriform rim region. There's always bone there. And with some of the new things, the new prototypes, you'll be able to go vertically. You can use a stab incision. Most of the time, you're going to use crestal incision in full arch cases because you're going to do some bone reduction. And anytime you're doing the maxilla, I'd recommend you always do a vertical incision to start with, so you can find the nasal spine, because there's always bone there. Now, some cases, you're not going to be able to find bone, especially if you want to do zygomas, which is off-label and not approved by the FDA. But in the extraorally, you can use a symphysis and the zygoma. I use the zygoma a lot in my maxillary cases. If you're from Europe, you can't do that unless you're an OMS. But it's really easy to put them up there. I put these images up to show you what you can do. The patient on the left had scleroderma, couldn't open her mouth, lips from more than 15 millimeters. No way you could do this guided otherwise. She couldn't get implants if she couldn't guide it. The right case is a patient that had a big reconstruction. And I'm showing you her images. This is at 2 weeks. Now she's Caucasian. She's not a person of color. So it's going to look better, obviously, right away. Obviously, she doesn't care about what she looks like because of the scars. You can see that. But look, everybody who's doing orthognathic surgery and, like oral maxillofacial surgery understands this. This is her at 2 weeks or 8 weeks. And I used a point camera flash to highlight her scars to make it look worse. There are, nobody's going to notice this on most patients. And most of our patients that are full arch patients are in their 50s and above, and they're not going to care. And this is a 3mm stab incision. So let's go through a case. This is a classic hybrid case, collapsed dentition, and this was done in DTX. This is when you need to stack STL files. Up until the last version of the X Guide, you had to go outside the system to use stack files, and you could use DTX. Now you can do it in X-Nav. We're working with Avident, and the model is the jump between the X-Nav software and the Avident software, or the DTX software. The occlusal locks in the back allow you to capture your vertical, as long as you don't change that by making incisions back there. When you put that in, it's going to capture your vertical. And then the handle in the front makes it easier for your pickup. And you can see the grooves to make the conversion easier. Here's the plan. We use the calibrated straight handpiece to do your bone reduction. What we've done in this case is we're going to do immediate denture in the maxilla and a hybrid in the mandible. Our incision is going to be a full crestal incision, and we're going to put the EDX screws in the anterior symphysis because it's easy. We're going to drive in those screws. Now, the important thing is to remember, don't remove the teeth until you've calibrated your patient, registered your patient. It's easy to forget that it's way easier to register on teeth if you have them than if you don't. So put the EDX screws in, register your patient, and then remove the teeth. And now we're tightening down the bolts and putting on the tracker. Now we register the patient anatomically. These are some old images. Now you can use intraoral scans to register. And now we're doing guided bone reduction. And if you see, I've already put implants in on the right. You don't need to do all the bone reduction. The reason I don't, especially in a case like this with a lot of bone reduction, is it bleeds like crazy after you do the bone reduction until you close the wound. And so I'll do 2 implants on the left and then 2 implants on the right, and do the bone reduction, then place the implants, and then close it after I put the parts on, and then go to the other side to decrease bleeding and also make it easier for me. You can see we're driving in, and this is post-op, and this is our accuracy data from the cumulative that we actually did upper and lower in this case. That's all the implants. There's no difference. Now, and as soon as it's approved, we're going to use FastMap to do this, and I'm not going to do anything in the future. So what's coming? We have stackable guides and AI. There was a question, and this is a sophisticated question, about how do we deal with isosurfaces in the holes when we do X-mark in the maxilla. Well, the answer is, as we move forward with AI, you're going to have these kind of images, and you'll be able to see what you're going to be able to touch. Dual scans are still available, even with stackable guides. Planning EDX screws, you see the image on the top left. You see the blue objects. Right now, you can plan your EDX screw position and arm position in the software. In this case, I'm planning extraoral approach. And you can see the superimposition of the STL files using AI, and then using STL files for X-mark. Now, there were questions about when I'm doing a case with no teeth, how do you register patients? Now, this is going to be a sophisticated discussion for a few seconds. You'll see I put the positions just on the edge of the foramen. If you're doing a zygoma case, like in this case, you can use the infraorbital nerves. If you're doing the mandible, on a full arch mandible, you can use the mental nerves. You don't want to put it inside. You want to put just lateral, because a lot of times the software doesn't see inside those foramen. So you want to do it at the top. Otherwise, if you pick it inside, it drops into infinity as far as the software goes. And then if you do a dual scan and you have the denture there, you can measure a distance from the edge of the denture to some anatomic point inside the mouth. And what I'll do is measure, say, 10 millimeters from the edge of the midline of the denture, and then I'll take a caliper and I'll go ahead and mark that on the STL file. Say in this case, it would be the nasal spine, and then I won't even make an incision. I'll just perforate right through. I'll use a caliper, measure that distance, and perforate right through the soft tissue, and touch it with the probe, and it's almost always really close, and then use refinement to get it. This is available. This has nothing to do with X-Nav. This is not FDA approved, but you can get this through H&H. This is a W&H handpiece, and they've gone around X-Guide and made a part that will work with our parts. So efficiency, you got to decrease your time. You can't decrease your time as far as surgery unless your staff works with you. You got to maximize your staff involvement. You can improve your profitability if you use your staff appropriately. You can maximize your equipment because you can use this for so much more than just putting in implants. I mean, we know it's going to improve your outcome in the implants, but what are we going to prove moving down their way as far as improving the outcome of third molars and other procedures? We've got some model data to show that it's better for osteotomies and straight cuts. You can use it for single tooth all the way to full arch, but you should be using it for everything. The problem is we believe we're better than we are. We are not as good as we think we are. The data shows that. There is no simple case. And I hope I have helped you, and I would like to hear questions. Michelle?
Okay, great. Dr. Emery, thank you so much. That was a lot of wonderful information, and I appreciate all of your experiences that you've shared with us this evening, and I'm sure that our participants have as well. So we did get some questions, and I am going to just read those to you, Dr. Emery. And please do feel free to continue asking questions. If you look on the bottom of your screen, there's a little panel that says Q&A, and you can type your questions in there. And then at the end of this, we can also open it up for dialogue. So let's start with some of the questions that came in during the presentation. So one of them was when you talked about incentivizing your assistants. It says, how much do you pay your X-Guide assistants?
Well, I pay my X-Guide assistants the same as my other assistants, but what I do is bonus them when they get to different levels of their modules. In other words, once they learn how to acquire an image and bring the image into the system, they get a bonus. And everybody's in different parts of the country. What I pay my staff here is probably way more than you pay your staff if you're in Ohio or Iowa. So I give them a nice bonus based on the value of what I think they're doing. And when they make me faster, right? I mean, I'm so fast. I'm so much faster now than I was, and I'm not rushing. because they do the work, right? And all I have to do is just drill. I mean, I'm not looking in the patient's, I know it sounds crazy, but I can shut the patient's mouth, and I do it all the time. That's why I use, yank hour suction when I'm placing the implants. And so, paying a staff member, like 500 to $500 to a bonus to, to become to do a module is no big deal. And then but the really big thing is when there are teachers. Once they become a teacher and they're a certified, at least in my office, a certified X-Nav assistant. I mean, they're invaluable because they let me tell you, they can treatment plan almost a case.
Okay.
But that takes a long time. But they can teach another staff member, and they're really proud of that. And the other staff members, especially the new ones coming in, really look up to them for help. So
Wonderful.
say, I don't know, $500 for becoming a module. I mean, I don't know what it's worth to you.
Right. And I'll also expand on that and just, so Dr. Emery is talking about allowing the staff members to do these modules. And we as X-Nav as a company have an extensive library of training videos. So that is something that's accessible to everyone. It covers everything from planning to doing calibrations to how to use the software and navigation. And so we have an extensive library of videos that are available. And so if you don't have those right now, we'll certainly send them out to everybody who's registered here and make sure you have quick access to those. That's a great resource to have. We also have our live surgery support program. So if you're not familiar with that, we do have the ability to be on for surgeries to help you get to that point as well if you need to ask questions during surgery. So that is a service that we have called the live surgery support. You can certainly contact customer service or technical support for more information on that. And then, that's another option for us to be able to assist.
What Michelle just mentioned is all the, when they go through modules, they all have to look at those videos.
Okay. All right, we have a lot more questions here. So the next question is, when the new software comes out, will that allow Xmark registration with the iOS scans?
Well, that's already available.
So this is the 342 software?
Yeah.
So
that's available. If you don't have it, you contact support and they'll get it for you.
Yep. So the 3.4.2 software has released. And so it has been sent out to some of the machines, some of the X-Guide systems. It is something that you do have to accept on your X-Guide system. So it's something that will pop up on your screen and you'll have to agree to accept the update. If for some reason you don't have it yet, or you would like to make sure you get it right away, you can reach out to our support team as well, and we'll make sure you get that right away. All right, let's see. The next one is, thank you for your time.
It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Emery. Do you have an info sheet available with the current edentulous arm offerings? I think that's something that we could probably get from X-Nav and send to Dr. Stern.
Yes.
Okay, the next one says, can you elaborate on your workflow for placing the percutaneous EDX screws in the ZM buttress area? Do you worry at all about facial nerve damage?
The answer is no, I don't. Make it just as incision through the dermis and then bluntly dissect down to bone, and you're not going to get any facial nerve injuries. So the answer is no. But if you're not comfortable with that, you probably would best work with a colleague that is. This is something that in this area where if you're an OMS, you're comfortable doing it. If you're not an OMS, you might want to reach out to one of your OMS colleagues to discuss it and make sure that you're comfortable with it. And moving forward, I think we're going to have some more of these, X-Nav collaborative events, and based on what people ask us for, we could get into like a shorter programs where we talk about specific things like that for people who aren't comfortable with it. But I would recommend that anybody that's doing percutaneous approaches, if you're not trained in it, that you reach out to a colleague that is, or reach out to X-Nav, you know, and we can probably help you out with that. The inferior border approach is, there's nothing to worry about.
Okay.
Short of perforating into the floor of the mouth. You need to stay on bone.
All right, our next question from Dr. Bath is, when you reference using iOS to pick points for X mark, could you elaborate on how you do that?
So if you're using the iOS, make sure, first off, you need to make sure that your superimposition is accurate. There's new windows in the new software in the superimposition windows that allow you to just scan through the arch and see that your superimposition is accurate. That's new. You used to have to skip back to the panoramic views or the arch views to see that. And this is new and it makes it a lot easier. So that's new and that's really helpful. I think I answered that question with that.
Yep, I think so. We can always open it up for more discussion at the end of this. We do have quite a few more questions, so I'll keep going on these ones. 2 questions about the training videos. So are the training videos released on the new software updates? And also, are there videos on maintaining the machine, like cleaning and avoiding damage? So the library of videos is rather extensive. We do send out a video and a document highlighting all of the new features in the new software. So as you get that, you will get those documents related to the new software. So you'll see exactly what's in the new software. So there's a nice video and a release document for that, as well as information on the machine. I will double check on the question about maintaining the machine. I know that is definitely something that would be in our manual. The manual is always accessible directly from your X-Guide system. And we also have the manual available electronically on the My X-Nav website, which is accessible on our main website if you go to the doctor login section. It will ask you for a PIN that's related to your serial number, and you can just contact customer service to gain access to that. So again, 2 ways to access your manual would be directly through the X-Guide system and then also on that website. I know we're talking about a lot of information here, so we will collect all of this at the end, and tomorrow we will send an email with information, all this information that we're talking about, so everyone can have quick access to it. And then I'm going to move on to our next question, which is for you, Dr. Emery. When you register with the EDX and then extract the teeth, do you leave the tracker arm in place or remove it and reattach?
So once you put the tracker arm and you register, you can't remove it. If you move the tracker arm, you're going to have to re-register. So the big thing is, and I've any mistake that you could make, I've made. So, you know, what you want to do is make sure you put the tracker arm. If there are teeth there, use the teeth, register the patient. And then you don't want to remove or move the tracker arm. If it moves, you can re-register the patient. And that you know, if you cut the teeth out or remove the teeth, you can now use the mental foramen in the mandible, and you can use if you're in the maxilla, you can use other anatomic locations. The other thing you can do, this is a more sophisticated thing. If you think your arm is going to move, you can go ahead and register the patient, make a couple of holes in the alveolus that you can see with a drill, and then mark them in the software with the XMark planning software, and just keep them there, and then you can go back and use them if you need it. again, these are sophisticated questions.
Mm.
You probably won't need to do that, but that's the answer to that question.
Okay, great.
And that's a little more than they asked.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. The next question is from Dr. Leblong. What is your experience using a lined acrylic rim to place implants in an edentulous ridge? Create the rim with an X-clip attached. Take a wash impression for a firm fit of the rim. Take the scan and design the case, then place the implants. This is minimally invasive option. So it looks like, what is your experience using a lined acrylic rim to place implants in an edentulous ridge? Is that something that you have?
I don't understand that question. A lined acrylic rim. I don't understand that question.
Maybe we'll come back to that and maybe we can expand on that one. All right, the next question. Okay, so this is a good one. I use X-Nav to place single dental implants and would like to be trained for more complicated cases. Are there any hands-on courses available? So I definitely have an answer to that, but I'll let you go first.
Well, Michelle will tell you that there's a lot of different hands-on courses. I mean, and I'm not pushing anything that I do, but I every month have, I like to say, visitors in my office, and we have a full day of nothing but X-Guide cases, and you can come in and watch us doing surgery, and in between cases, and you can bring your staff, and I think that's a big deal. They'll interact with my staff, and my staff will teach your staff, and any questions you have about different procedures you can ask, and you want to learn about any specific procedure, I go over it in between cases. And then Dr. Russo down in Florida has a full arch hands-on course. It's not just full arch, it's a full EDX, full X-Guide course down in Sarasota, Florida. That's phenomenal. And then I know Dr. Cullum's going to be having a course up in Alaska, and then Michelle will tell you about more courses.
So there are lots of wonderful courses that our customers are doing that cover lots of advanced uses, and they're clinical courses. Like Dr. Emery said, he has courses in his office. I'm going to direct everybody to a place on our website where you can find all of these courses. If you go to the X-Nav website, which is www.x-navtech.com. And if you go to events and education, there'll be a menu option for clinical courses. And all of our wonderful clinical courses are listed there. These are all of the customers and partners that are providing these types of course opportunities. As you mentioned, Dr. Russo's full arch, single implants, a full arch course with restorative elements as well in Sarasota, Florida. Dr. Cullum has a variety of courses for sinus lifts. And we also have the Dr. Pazzi course in Italy. And then if you are going to the AAOMS Dental Implant Conference in Chicago this December, which is coming up very quickly, there is a hands-on course there. And that one will talk about immediates and crestal sinus lifts as well. It's almost sold out from what I hear from the AAOMS, but it is going to be a wonderful course that Dr. Emery and Dr. Cullum are going to be doing as a hands-on course at AMOS. And then obviously, if you're going to the AAOMS, we will also have a customer reception. We did send information on that. Hopefully everybody on this call received it. It's also posted in our Facebook users group. Again, lots of great information, and I will definitely put all of this together in an email to send out to everybody tomorrow, just so that you can access that. But there's lots of great courses for you to see. And even Dr. David Lee Hill is going to be speaking at the AMOS DIC meeting. So that'd be a great one to catch as well. So really a lot of great opportunities, and I'll make sure I get that information out. I will move to the next question here, just because we do have quite a few still unanswered. So Dr. Oksana Korsh has asked, does the new update allow upload of several STL scans and toggle between them during planning? For example, the prosthetic workup scan versus the site scan?
The answer is yes.
Wonderful.
Hi, Oksana.
All right. And then another question. Let's see, we have here is, let me just see. So this is a specific question. Again, this would be available in the manual, but do you know what temperature water bath you need to mold the X clip and how long?
So I'll tell you what, I don't use a water bath anymore. And the reason I don't is because staff forget to turn it off, and they're expensive and they burn them out. So what I use now is a stainless steel heating teapot. I use a stainless steel teapot, and then I use stainless steel single thermos mugs, because those can be sterilized. So I have a bunch of those. And so what they do is they heat the water in a stainless steel teapot, which costs like $30, and it's very fast. And then they pour it into the stainless steel thermos, which can be sterilized, and they heat it up in that. And when it's clear, then you can pick it up and you hold it. So you don't need to worry about the temperature, because it's when it's clear, it's warm enough. And then pick it up with a pair of tweezers, and then watch it and feel it with your hands. Once you can touch it with your hands, you can put it in the patient's mouth. Like I said, the water baths are all well and good, but I don't know about your staff, but they forget to turn them off, and they burn all the water out of them, and then a $400 water bath is gone. So I just use a stainless steel teapot, and it works great. Make it water hot. You don't contaminate it. You just pour it into a stainless steel, uh, um, 1 cup mug, and use that, and then you can sterilize that, and they're real cheap.
Okay. And then again, I'll reiterate that if you would like to know specific temperatures, there are some specific instructions about the temperatures that need to be reached for the X clips. And so there are very specific instructions that you'll be able to find in the manual. And as a reminder, the manual can be found on the X-Guide system and also electronically. You can reach out to customer service for the electronic version of the manual, and they can instruct you on how to access that. But it's always available on your X-Guide system. So that is definitely something that is covered in there in the manual. So the easiest thing would be to quickly reference that in the most updated version of the manual. All right, let's see. We have. Do you use X-Guides for immediates? And also, how often do you do the root shields that you showed?
So the answer is yes. X-Guide's great for immediates for 2 reasons. Number one, you can plan ahead of time, and you can use the X-Guide. You can use the X-Guide to extract the teeth. So if you're doing an immediate, right, and you say, well, it's a molar, you want to split the tooth, as after doing a bunch of model studies on how good we are extracting, we're really bad at splitting teeth. And so if you put a rod down your tooth, you can use the preps to do that, and you drill a hole down the tooth in the middle of the tooth where you want to split it, and then you go back and forth, you're going to find that you're going to split the tooth much more accurately. In the aesthetic zone, go straight down the canal and then split the tooth buccolingually, so you don't spread it mesial-distally and break out the buccal. You can use the X-Guide to take the tooth out, and people don't think about that, but that's the biggest inhibitor to do an immediate, because you don't do a good job splitting the tooth. And then, yes, Dr. Cullum is going to be doing a course on that. He does lots of courses on immediates. And I showed you a case that Dr. Bath did. And I show you those things that, just so you know, I'm not the only one that's doing it. the answer is yes, and makes it way easier. Then you want to use an aggressive thread pattern because you don't have a lot when you're doing immediates to hold the implant in. So it's helpful for extracting the tooth, which most people don't talk about, because that's, if you break the buccal plate off, you can't do an immediate. And then finding the furcation is a big deal in the molar area. And I use osseodensification when I do that. So again, I showed you that. So the answer is yes and yes.
Excellent. All right, we have another question here. What is your standard workflow for new patients? Do you have an exam, clip, and CT at one visit and then guide surgery at a separate visit, or do you do everything in one visit?
So a lot of it has to do with the workflow in your office. So, and also what images the patient comes with. So let's assume patient comes with nothing and I'm busy. Like I'm behind. Because I don't know about you, but most of us find ourselves behind, and I don't want a patient to wait. So the staff, I come in and say hi. I look at the images that come in. I tell the patient we need a new X-ray because they don't have an X-ray. And then I leave, and the staff takes a CT, and then I'm might be seeing another patient, and then the staff pulls the CT up and does an initial plan, and then I look at the plan and I may be still busy, and then the staff takes an intraoral scan, and so the patient is busy the whole time, and then I come in, I've got all these images, and I say, this is what we're going to do. Another patient comes in, they already have a CBCT, say from an endodontist who said you got a fractured tooth. My staff loads that CT in. I come in, I look at the CT. I said, yeah, your tooth is fractured. I leave. They take an intraoral scan, and I'm ready to go for the next case I'm going to do an immediate. So it all depends on what's going on. A lot of people think that the imaging is a problem. I think the imaging is an opportunity to make a little more money and also get more information that I need to do a proper job, a proper thing on the patient, and also gives me more time and flexibility on what I'm doing in the office as far as the workflow in the office that day and that specific time. If somebody comes in and the staff doesn't have the time to take the intraoral scan, I'll do it. I'll reschedule them and do it when they come in at the next visit. So I think once you start understanding a digital workflow, you start understanding how powerful it is as far as the interactions with your patients when they're in the office. And really, so nobody ever is waiting. They're always doing something.
Very nice. Thank you. Let's see. A question about the staff program. So the question is there an actual certification, or is it just based on their experience?
So
I guess it's how do you...
I made up a certification, and look, it doesn't matter whether, it doesn't matter whether they're actually certified or not. It's what you pay them and how you, like when I talked about it, it's like empowerment for the employee. What makes the employee feel good about what they're doing? And, I say they're a certified X-Nav employee when they've finished these modules. It's not really complicated as far as establishing modules in your office. They need to learn how to do an X clip and an intraoral scan and a CT, and then pulling those things into the software. That's module 1, and all those things are available on the X-Nav website. You can start by showing them the videos in the X-Nav website and then teaching them how to do it. The next module is calibration and registration. All that CE is available on the X-Nav website. And then the next module is treatment planning. Well, the treatment planning is I'm showing them what I'm doing over and over and over again. And then they do it, and then I correct them. And then after a while, they're good enough that I don't correct them until I walk into the room. When they can do that and then teach somebody, then they become certified. They have to be able to teach another employee how to do it. And all those things are things that I make up, but they get money for it. And they don't, you can pay them what you want. It doesn't matter, but there should be a motivator. Maybe it's a certificate to go have dinner at a local restaurant, whatever you want to do. But most people want money. So I give them a little money, and it's worth it. I've done this with many things. It's not just X-Nav. It's like, that's why I have employees that have been with me for 20 or 30 years, because I motivated them and I praise them and I empower them and I make them feel good about what they're doing. And that's what you need to do.
Wonderful. And again, the videos that you referenced, I think that you're having them make sure they watch and understand the different steps are available from X-Nav. So we'll make sure everybody on this program gets access to those. And again, some of them are specific to tasks that the staff will do. Some of them are specific to tasks that the doctor will do. But at least the library is available that you can certainly utilize. And we encourage everybody to utilize, because there's some really great videos in there that we have for our customers. And then, of course, if you have any questions that aren't answered in there, we're always looking for suggestions. And our customer service team is wonderful, and our technical support team is wonderful, and we will certainly be able to answer any questions that you or the staff might have. Let's see, I think from what I can see, that's all the questions that we have in our chat. We have a couple comments that just saying that they love the program. Thank you so much. They look forward to attending future programs. We have what looks like a new customer who says that they have not yet unwrapped their X Guide and their excitement is building to start using it. So that's wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to address that maybe didn't come up in questions? Otherwise, I'll probably wrap it up. And I think we've covered everything extensively. I'd like to thank everybody. We still have a lot of our attendees on, which is always a great sign, because we did go over the 1 hour mark. So lots of interest. Thank you guys for hanging on. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Again, we will send a follow-up email tomorrow just to let everybody know some of this wonderful information that we talked about, and just make sure you have access to all this information. Please do let us know if you have additional questions that come up that were not answered or that you didn't have a chance to ask on this program. We will continue to do future programs. This was our second virtual customer conference, and hopefully you were able to catch the first one, which was recorded. We can always send that to you if you did not catch that. And then we look forward to seeing you on our future ones. Always open for topic suggestions for our next programs. And I know this was a lot of information, so we'll probably do another follow-up one of these as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Emery. It was so helpful to hear all of your information.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody.